Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Rosado, and I work at the Connecticut State Department of Education in the Performance Office. I want to welcome you today to this webinar about teaching the artistic process from a distance. It's part of the Connecticut State Department of Education series of webinars about learning at a distance. So we have three great presentations for you on all the different areas in arts. We have presenters from Glastonbury, Waterbury, and Brookfield that are going to take you through the different areas and how they're teaching virtually to their students. But first, let's talk a little bit about some of the housekeeping for the webinar. So all the attendees are going to be in listen-only mode. However, we welcome your questions. Please type your questions into the questions box, and the questions will be posed to the presenters at the conclusion of the session. As a reminder, the session is being recorded and it will be posted onto the CSCE's COVID-19 webpage. Additionally, the slides for this presentation have been uploaded into the handouts section of the webinar platform, so please feel free to download those. So our presenters today are Cindy Parsons from Glastonbury, Margaret Fitzgerald from Brookfield Public Schools, and Jeannette Gumbulevich from Waterbury. And I'm sorry, Jeannette, if I didn't say your last name. All right. So our first presenter is going to be Cindy Parsons from Glastonbury. And so we're going to just get her set up to show her slides right now. Okay, Cindy, you should be able to start sharing now.
Okay.
Great, I can see your screen. I see your Google.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be part of this team, and this is an exciting webinar to be participating in. So hopefully you'll get some information that is useful to you, and if you have any questions, my contact information is here on this first slide, as well as on the last slide. So I'm going to just start with a couple of minutes of talking about how we got to this place. Once it was determined that we would be trying to do some distance learning and not being in school. So we rolled probably midweek, the week of the 7th or 9th of March, that we'd be going to distance learning by the following Monday. So we didn't have any we didn't have any time for prepping. What we did have in place was technology support, and all of our students had iPads, K-12. So they hadn't all had experience with some of the formats and platforms that we decided to use, but at least they had the technology available. So for some reason, here we go. So first we started this on Monday. Some of our teachers were already set up to use Seesaw with our students, so they started to communicate through that platform, as well as through email and through messages from their school building administrators, mostly elementary teachers that did that. We found quickly that collaboration with our department members was key. Setting up Google Hangouts and Meets and Zoom meetings as quickly as we learn to use them. We set up meetings by level also that are regular and ongoing to continue to communicate ideas and solve. Our 6th through 12 students were already familiar with Google Classroom. Some more so than others were using it. And so that became the go-to for those grade levels. By the second week, yeah, our biggest concern became consistent engagement with students. We were in trouble communicating with them, finding them, getting them to respond or send in work. Other concerns were what were going to be long-term goals if this continued. And we decided to start to develop a list of what were the non-negotiables for our learning. And then we decided, how are we going to deliver this more consistently strict? Other questions teachers had at this point were how reports going to look and what does assess look like. So I'm sure most of you had similar concerns and thoughts about these things as you've started this process. Our district decided at that point it would have been the best bet for K-5 teachers to all be using Seesaw. So they purchased the full version for our district. That helped most of my teachers, but it also made it difficult for those teachers who had not been using it consistently. They had to learn it. It was a crash course. Also, our younger kids hadn't had an opportunity to use it, so they were going to have to learn with support from home and support from the communication they could get from their teachers to learn how to manage it. Week 3, start to work with new apps. And we found some drawing apps and some virtual museum apps that have been very useful in developing lessons K-12. Some of our teachers decided to set up regular hours for students to either connect with them via email or Google Meets or chats, whatever was available to them. Teachers were collaborating more to use and the full version of Seesaw was up and running. Elementary lessons began to get developed more consistently and posted on websites and principal messages. They were getting, parents were getting the information, students were getting the information. The goal for elementary especially was engagement, with some attempt at learning some skills and knowledge related to whatever the lessons were. Mostly iPad use. Some of the apps we decided to use have been Sketches School, the Milwaukee Museum app, National Gallery of Kids app, and a lot of kids are taking photos of their work with their iPads as well. So here's an example of a activity for our elementary team. And we also decided we were going to divide elementary K2 for primary lessons and 3 to 5 for the older elementary kids. But the lessons were basically the same skill or the same content, so and just the level of achievement was going to be different. This is an app that we discovered and were able to download to iPads called Cole's Art Generation. It's connected to the Milwaukee Art Museum and has a great ability for different activities and interactive activities. Here's another part of that one lesson. So our teachers are creating these as a team at the elementary level. They're developing very short slideshows that they are downloading onto Seesaw for their kids to see at the beginning of the week, with the expectation that it's going to be done that week. Here's another one that was a scavenger hunt for texture and different activities related to texture. So you can see that the content is still connected to our discipline. It's just probably much different than what it would look like in the classroom. I'm sure you've seen versions of these I put little emojis on the faces of the kids, but recreating a famous artwork that they saw through the virtual museum app. So students were asked to view certain collections or certain paintings in the app, and then try to recreate it at home. The results of these were just so charming. Kids were having a blast. Some of them got their families involved, depending on how many people they needed in the shot. But they were very creative in their responses. This is a screenshot of what it looks like on Seesaw. If you were a teacher, this you can see where the instructions are given on the right side there. There are attachments here. There's a Loom video here. I'm not sure. I'm going to see if I can go back to that. Not sure if this will work, but I don't think it'll work in this. Try it again. Loom is a video type of a app or a platform that some teachers are using that will do something similar to YouTube or a slide presentation. So you might look that up. I thought I had a link to this, but apparently I don't. And then the templates for the assignments are also listed on the Seesaw site. Here's an example of feedback that teachers can give on Seesaw. Students can take photos of their sketches, sketchbook, upload it to their Seesaw account. Teachers can respond in text or actually draw right on their image to give them feedback. It's really a nice way to connect with kids and give feedback in a pretty quick way. Here's an example of peer-to-peer feedback on the same platform using Seesaw as well. This is a music lesson for, we have an enrichment of the arts, not class, but it's a program that we have in our 6th grade school called Exploring the Arts. We had a famous cellist that performed a couple of weeks ago. Let's see if this works. You might be able to see a little bit. So that's one thing you might think about doing is having artists perform for your students or show their work for your students. I'm not going to obviously show this whole thing, but I'm going to shut this off now. But that's something that my teachers have started to do. They've started to connect with artists and have had virtual studio tours, and it's been very, very rewarding for them. Middle school assignments. This is a screenshot of a middle school assignment on Google Classroom. You can see that along with the instructions from the teacher, at the bottom there are some tutorials that the teacher has included using, I think he took movies of himself here. And then there's also a responding attachment sheet for the kids to do. This is a assignment from that particular teacher for logo design. Students have to create their own logo. They have to invent their own company. For this one was for a phone case, I believe. And then students present their work through a slideshow that they upload. This was a George Siegel assignment, which I thought was delightful. Get kids to dress up in monochromatic clothes and pose for a camera shot. This is doable. You don't have to worry about materials. That's one thing that has been a struggle for everybody, I think, is what materials are there available in the home, and it's not equitable. So that has been a concern for everybody. But this was a great assignment that I think kids can do, and I think they probably had fun doing it. Here's another middle school assignment, taking their cameras on their iPad and finding words through objects in nature or in the environment that somehow show the shape of a letter. So here's some examples of that. Again, that's pretty doable if there's a phone available or an iPad or a camera that they can take photos with. When we get to high school, courses are most often media specific. The biggest challenge we've had are the 3D courses. This is a ceramics assignment for ceramics class. Our teachers are also using Prezi. I don't know if you're familiar with Prezi. Let's see if this will play. This is a journal assignment for ceramics class. So Prezi comes out looking a little bit like a different type of presentation, a little bit like video. I'm not sure if this is going to play, but we'll see.
All right, so welcome back to our next project. Very excited about this one. This one's a lot about sketching, but instead of just on.
I'm going to actually move it ahead so that you can see. These all pull out. There are pull out for categories within the lesson.
And I highly recommend that.
There we go.
All right, so your project. So she started on January 1st. We'll start today. You're going to start just kind of wrapping your brain around it today, and then starting next week, we'll jump into our sketches.
All right, so Prezi is a really great way to present different aspects of an assignment. If you're trying to show, what student work looks like, what an artist's work looks like, what the assessment will look like. And it's easy to pull back and forth, a little bit easier than in a slide presentation where you have to keep going back to a certain slide where you can just pull out the category that you want. So as I said, this is an example of a journal assignment. Students are responding to that particular artist's work that was in the Prezi presentation. High school teachers are using a lot of technology, a lot of different platforms, a lot of different apps. This is another journal done in the Notes app. Notes is a free app, comes with everybody's phone, it comes with everybody's iPad. Believe it or not, it's got a wonderful sketching tool. This is an example from one of our AP kids. One of my teachers is doing a classroom streaming daily announcement. AP kids are supposed to log on, get to the Google Classroom and watch or read or participate in the Google streaming. It's kind of an online blog part of Google Classroom. As I said, some teachers are using Zoom meetings for office hours or Google Meets for office hours. Some are asked to just check in for attendance. I don't know if attendance is an issue for everybody, but we were asked to take attendance at these levels, at the high school level. So teachers were finding that difficult. They found their own way to do this. Some are having kids just on Google Classroom on the streaming tab, just say yes or I'm here, or just something to count them as being present. We've had some virtual tours. working with the Wadsworth and the New Burton Museum. We were using some Adobe apps. We're using iMovie. We're using YouTube for posting and finding resources. Here's an example of that streaming screen from one of my teachers. You can see that she greets them every morning with, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I expect for you either today or this week. Gives them some feedback on their work. Sometimes she posts an empty slideshow where kids drop their work so that they can all give feedback. It doesn't have to be fancy. So this is her just talking to her kids every morning.
Guys. So yesterday's responses, you guys were very closely sort of defining the artist statement with.
So again, that's just a check-in every morning with our students, and it's a good way to give face-to-face time, which I think is probably one of the most difficult things for kids right now, is they're not seeing that face-to-face time. This was an Earth Day's activity sheet that was given to some kids. There were 8 different activities. I took, this was through one of the resources that I've been on, online distance art learners, I think is the name of it. This was shared, so I used it and kind of plugged in my own activities. But again, this was a slideshow. Kids had choice. We're finding if you give them choice, they're going to probably be more comfortable with completing the assignments. This is a screenshot, one of the virtual museum tours by the docent at the Wadsworth participated in. This was a Zoom meeting. I kind of blocked out all the kids' faces with some emojis, but it was a great way for kids to talk back and forth with the museum. And the teacher actually recorded this session. So they could go back and replay it if they needed to. So moving forward, we are trying to keep platforms to a minimum and apps to a minimum so kids aren't overwhelmed and their parents aren't overwhelmed. That's been a struggle through this. Parents are having to learn immediately, not only the art apps and platforms, but all the other courses as well, especially for those younger kids. Engagement has been inconsistent. Keeping connections is the priority, and we're just doing everything we can. I have people that are on phone conversations, especially with special needs kids. Some of my teachers have gone to kids' houses, dropping off materials. So they're making connections as best they can. Collaborate. If you don't have anybody in your district or in your department that you can collaborate with, find somebody online through another resource or in another district. It's important to keep those ideas fresh, and it helps support all of us when we're collaborating. We're looking at the fall, maybe doing some sort of distance learning. We're all unsure about that. I'm expecting that teaching will look different somehow. PD set opportunities, again, we have to look at that, especially this summer moving forward. We have to start looking for ways to deliver and take PD for all of this stuff. And here's some resources that I've been using, and I participate in some of these. Some of these are Facebook groups. Some of them are just online resources. But please, if you find others, share them. These are the ones that I have found. And again, you're not going to find everything that you see on some of these are great lessons, but it might spark an idea with getting you to move forward with your own. I know I sped through that, but I
That
think,
was great, Cindy. There's so many resources and so many different, there were a lot of questions about engagement and things like that, which I feel like you've touched on, and I'm probably going to bring that one back to all the group when we get through the presentations. But there was a question, how did you get students familiar with using the apps that you were using?
that's a good question. We were lucky in that, I'm trying to get back to my screen with you guys. I'm not quite sure how to do that. So I'll just go back to this.
Oh, I actually just moved it to Jeannette. Do you want me to go back to you again?
No, that's fine. I'm just having trouble getting back to that link, so we're good. How do we?
Jeannette, you have presenter control too, just letting you know if you want to get ready. Okay, sorry.
Not a problem. We were lucky that we had K-12 iPads in place. Other than kindergarten, maybe first grade, they were already using them for documentation of their work, or little guys had already learned how to document their work with the camera and putting it up on Seesaw. We were lucky that when we went to the district-wide Seesaw account, classroom teachers mostly took over that and helped those. So all of the kids' work, if you had a student in kindergarten, for example, all of that classroom work and all the specials work was coming from Seesaw. So that parent had to learn Seesaw to help the kid, but at least it was consistent. And it's been a great tool for keeping the kids' work all in one place. I don't know if I answered the question.
That was great. Yeah, thanks. I think we're going to take some more questions at the end that people had posed for you. And there are quite a few questions, and we will get to those at the end. I'm going to turn it over to Jeannette.
Okay, can you see my screen?
I can, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so Waterbury Public Schools, we had a little bit of a different approach because we really were not. Okay, so on March 12th, we received a phone call that school would be closed until at least March 20th. And the district distributed learning packets to all our students. And Waterbury began conducting technology surveys with parents and guardians. They had an iris alert sent home to them to respond to a survey. And the parents who did not respond, we as staff ended up calling individually and getting responses from them so we could plan to distribute Chromebooks to our students. And so we began with the high school the first few weeks of April, followed by the middle school and then the elementary school. So that way we knew that all our students had access to technology and would be able to use the asynchronous Google platform. A meeting was held with our fine arts supervisor, Holly Maxton, to discuss what the learning plan was for the fine arts. So the district came up with a learning plan as to how all the fine arts would be addressed through this distance learning. And we have had materials that we needed as teachers, which were access to internet, connection to laptops, Chromebooks, iPads, etc. So we also had to have our technology in order for this to work. The fine arts teachers in grades 6 through 12, we had to set up individual Google Classrooms for our students. And our elementary people were invited by the academic classroom teacher to have a classroom within their classroom for their fine arts courses. And then we had to reach out to make sure all our students were engaged in Google Classroom. So we had to check that everyone had been invited, that they were active, and then if they were not active, then we contacted parents through email or phone calls. One of our responsibilities was to provide feedback and or grade as needed for our students, monitor interactive discussions to ensure high level of professionalism, actively monitor our emails for questions and communications from families and students throughout the day, We do a lot of our troubleshooting with Google Classroom through that because a lot of our students were not trained on how to use Google Classroom. The district provided lots of tutorials, which we have uploaded, or I send directly to students via email if they can't get onto Google Classroom or do something within Google Classroom, and participate in regular communication with our supervisor via email or virtual meetings. Once a week, we meet with Holly Maxon and we discuss what's going on in our classrooms, what's going on in the district. And we also added Holly as a co-teacher in our classroom, so she could pop in and see what's going on in the classroom. We were also told to invite our special ed teachers, and now the paras are being invited to the classroom to help assist with modifications and accommodations for our special ed students. We need to provide ample time for them to complete assignments. And this is so true because I'm finding that my students, even though I'm giving them these long time ranges, that they are taking longer than I actually expected. And a lot of that is because they're sharing technology with their siblings in the household. Some of them at the high school level that I teach at are watching their younger siblings and helping them with their Google Classroom assignments. So we are allowing them a lot of extra time to complete the work. Some kids are having to go out and gather resources around their house to use for materials. On a daily basis, reach out to my colleagues for support and collaborating on lessons. My supervisor and administrators have been absolutely helpful with this when I've had an issue or I need to ask a question or bounce an idea off of them. Also keeping our building administrators in the loop with what's going on with families and students, because sometimes they'll send us an email saying, you know what, I can't do this assignment, I'm homesick, I'm not feeling well, and other things that come up that we need to keep people in the loop in. So Waterbury has this amazing website called Waterbury Creates, and it was set up through, and I'm going to share it. It was set up by one of our elementary teachers, our elementary art teachers. And the feature that I love the most on this, and I get a lot of my ideas from, is we have an at-home slideshow. So the work that they're doing at home, we upload onto the slideshow and it instantaneously goes right onto the website. So here are some examples of what our students are doing at home with what supplies they have. So they're doing some amazing work, and their name and their school and grade are at the bottom. So this is a fantastic resource for our teachers and a way to show off the work that they're doing, all the hard work that they're doing while learning from home. There's also a visual arts tab on the website where we have elementary lessons, early childhood lessons, middle school lessons. And on these tabs, they have different resources like Cindy was talking about, Art Ed, Art Action, different websites that they can access and get ideas from. We have art projects that rock, visual art search engines, art games. I love this one for elementary, the art book. It has read aloud, cover to cover of different art books that are out there that people have read online and uploaded. So at the elementary level, if they want to put a literature-based lesson in, they just have to find the links to the book. I use this one all the time to sketchbook ideas. I have a weekly sketchbook assignment for my 6th grade, and I get a lot of my prompts off of kind of crazy, off of this website. But there are examples on here for prompts. We have art, songs, games. I like the art, games, and activities one. So if students are working on an iPad or on their phone, they can download these apps. And these are great interactive games that they can do on their iPad. And some of them you can do on a Chromebook. So I've sent some of these links out to my students. And we also have the virtual museum tour. So we have ones that are meant for elementary and some that are for high school and middle school. And I've actually sent students on a tour of the Van Gogh Museum for one of my projects. I didn't go on the website and go on the virtual tour of the Van Gogh Museum. We also have a tab for music where we have instrumental tutorials for our elementary kids and our high school kids. Again, games and music apps. There's a theater tab and a dance tab because we do have theater and dance in the Waterbury school district. We also have in our Google Drive, we have a K-8 lesson share where teachers can upload lessons and share ideas with other K-8 teachers. At the high school level, we pretty much collaborate within our buildings and within the high school because a lot of us are teaching singleton courses. This is what my Google Classroom page looks like. I found organizing it by having my 2 graphic design classes in separate classrooms works better for classroom camaraderie because there is that stream in Google where they can see each other's comments. And I just felt having them stay in their own classroom would, 1, be easier, and 2, they'd be a little more comfortable with their peers that they have been with since March. Here's a screenshot of one of my 6th grade classrooms. And I tried to set up my Google Classroom just like I would in my regular classroom, where they get background information about the concept that we're learning. I did put something with a historical context because they're used to that in the creating and responding. And then I found a video on YouTube, which is now an art teacher's best friend, of how to create radial symmetry using found objects in the house. And then I realized a lot of my students were struggling with the concept of how do I get my piece of paper to be a perfect square without a ruler? Because again, they have limited supplies. We don't know what they have at home. So I found a video online of how to take a piece of printer paper, which most of them are using to create their artwork on, and make it into a square without having to get out a ruler. And then as usual, I do an assessment with them. And on the assessment, I make sure that I address the responding, which we would normally do in class with each other, you know, back and forth live. But I wanted to make sure that they did understand the historical concept of radial symmetry. Here's an example of a piece of work that a student passed in. And in Google Classroom, you can add your comments by highlighting an area of their work. And then a chat box pops up and you can write your comment feedback to the student about their work. And there's also a private comment area, which I find when we are going through the planning process of a piece of artwork, we have a lot of discussion in there about their thoughts, their ideas, general questions they might have about the project that they don't want to put out to all their peers, that they don't understand something. So this is a way of having that one-to-one conversation with your students, which is very valuable and is something, you know, I miss with this online learning, is having my students in front of me, being able to give them that instantaneous feedback. And then they are able to just type right into the assessment pages that are set up and pass those in. At our elementary level, Stephanie Picario sent me a screenshot of her Google Classroom, and you can see that in her directions, number 4 is if you can try to upload a picture of your work, watch this quick video, and it shows you how to upload onto Google Classroom, which seems to be the biggest challenge for our students, is that whole process of uploading their artwork. But as the weeks have been going on, they're figuring it out quickly. And Stephanie has a really great idea with she's taking her lesson and doing it in both English and Spanish, because we do have a lot of Spanish-speaking parents. And at the elementary level, the parents are really having to help their students with the execution of the art lessons, reading them directions, helping with gathering supplies, so on and so forth. We had a teacher in Waterbury who got a grant, and a donor's choice grant, and they got an Amazon gift card, and it was a music teacher, and she used the money from the Amazon gift card to order art supplies for the students at her school to distribute them, and distributed them to the students, which was really nice, because we do have the issue where students do not have these supplies readily available, and I find myself having to take inventory surveys of, what do you have available in your house, and that way I can kind of cater the lesson to the materials that they seem to have mostly readily available. And here are some of the results of her design of her lesson plan. She said we could either do them in 2D, 3D, or digitally. So she sent me examples of all 3 formats, which I think they came out fantastic. Our high school sculpture teacher did a assemblage using clothing. So they had to go and find either take a selfie or find a portrait of a person of notoriety and create a portrait using their clothing, or a sculpture using their clothing as their medium. My very first lesson with the 6th graders, I did found object color wheels, because I was still trying to figure out what my students had for supplies and where I was going to go next with my lessons, because I was not sure, what they had accessible to them. So they did a fantastic job. I'm impressed by the student who was able to find everything in his kitchen and upload it. For printmaking, I had them look at Max Ernst's Tree of Life and do a frottage or a rubbing underneath. So they passed that, and I said, listen, I want you to go out, find objects that have texture, do a texture rubbing, and upload that. And I looked at them, and I told them, you maybe add more, choose, some different textures, and then we did a sketch of what they would probably want to put as the image over the textures, and then they created the image. And I told them they could use any materials they wanted. They could use found objects, they could use paint, they could use marker, whatever they had available. But my only requirement was that the print on the bottom and the piece on the top had some sort of connection. So there was a lot of problem solving for them with this, and I think they did a great job. I'm also able to give feedback to students on their assessments through Google Classroom. So you just highlight an area and just write what you want them to be aware of, what they did well, sometimes what they have to go back and fix because they may have not answered the question. I have found this journey challenging at times. However, with the help of my colleagues in the district and other art colleagues around the state, it has eased the burden of having to use the online instruction. I feel that this has been a rewarding professional experience, and learning something new. So, like I said, it has been challenging, but we're all getting through this together. And there's my contact information if you have any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Jeannette. That was awesome. I love that Waterbury Creates website.
Oh, it is.
It's so
fantastic.
cool.
It's getting built up every day, which is so fantastic. Like it's kind of started with a couple art teachers, and what ideas do you have, what websites and resources do you know of, and just got very compiled together. And now theater and dance and music are building up their tabs too, which I mean it's a fantastic resource for both the teachers and the parents and the students.
Yeah, I mean, what a way to get excited as a student, as an artist, to see your work displayed so prominently.
I mean,
I did
a slide, there had to be like over 200 slides on there.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, that's great. What someone did ask, is that website available to everyone?
Yes, it is. You can access it through the Waterbury Public Schools website.
Okay. All right, and then I'm gonna switch it over to Margaret. Margaret, you should have control of the screen. And before you go, Jeannette, how much time a week are your lessons supposed to take for art for your students?
Well, I'm at the middle school and high school level, and I tend to assign them something and give them it depends on the assignment. Like the found object color wheels, I gave them 2 weeks to complete that because it was something new. The printmaking lesson, I gave them like a week and a half to gather their objects and do the rubbing, and I gave them feedback, and then I gave them another week and a half to sketch out and plan for the top layer. And most of them got them in the deadline. I find, because I'm at the Arts Magnet School, that my students, they really crave the arts, and that's the way for them to kind of get away from their academic work, and it's important to them because a lot of them want to pursue careers in art.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
I'm finding my students are turning stuff over and getting stuff in on time, but I do still have students who, I need to contact. And I also do a question of the day, like Cindy's art teachers do, to see who's engaged and who's not. So I'll ask a question and say, you need to answer this question in, the next 2 days. So I know that you're online and I know that you're active. And if they're not online and they're not active, I would either call home or I email the parent. And usually the emails get a quicker response because I'm finding that with the new smartphones that people can send unknown numbers to just voicemail and they don't check them. Mm-hmm. So I'm finding that are the most effective way to communicate with our students.
As a parent, I can tell you that email gets me right away, and I'm on it in a second. So, all right, I'm going to turn it over to Margaret, and take it away, Margaret. We can see your screen, so thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you very much for having Brookfield part of this wonderful webinar. I'd like to start off by just saying, many like you, we went to school on a Thursday, and that was the last day. We said goodbye to our kids. Some of them had their Chromebooks at home. The elementary kids didn't. We had to arrange a Chromebook pickup. We've changed our grading to a pass-fail option in the elementary school for most grades. So it's been a lot of changes, many of which Cindy and Jen talked about. In Brookfield, we're doing asynchronous learning. We do have Zoom meetings live with the students in real time to say hello and make that really important connection. But during those Zoom meetings, we really don't do anything instructional. This way we can be present for our students and families informally, and the instruction continues online. We're meeting weekly as departments and collectively as a building staff. And during some of our department weekly meetings, we have professional development focused just on the departments by our head of technology on things we really want to explore more. That's been really helpful for us as we're moving forward. So we did do parent and student teacher surveys so we could move forward with some good feedback. Some of those, again, you've heard before, this is overwhelming. There's too many websites for parents and kids to keep track of. So we've been cognizant of that, and it's been helped shape what we do. I'm going to start going through music things because this is really my specialty area. So we're going to start with general music's K1. And what you see on your screen here is some of the things that our K1 teacher, Amy Cody, has done. Music consists of 2 Google Classrooms, one for kindergarten, one for first grade. We shared those classrooms on the weekly menu with each classroom teacher to encourage students to sign up. We found that a really successful way, besides emailing, to get kids in our rooms. When we first started creating lessons for kindergarten and first grade, we used Google Slides for our students to click through. But after receiving parent feedback from the surveys, Amy automated as much of that as she could. So if the parent puts it on present mode, it just kind of goes. And that way the kids had more autonomy and the parents had a break from the intensive oversight and stress that they're feeling. She added a play button on each page for non-readers to hear the text read out loud to them. And lessons were planned at the beginning, especially using familiar materials so kids can learn how to reconnect to music in this new learning modality. Here's a little example of a sweet little song that one of the students sent in. I'll just do a little bit of it. So she's doing that along with the embedded Google video in the deck slides that was done. So again, familiar material, and use them for different learning activities as we move on. Kindergartners at one point were encouraged to explore pitch through use of household items such as water bottles, squirt guns, sidewalk chalk, and fun. Squirt guns, yes, the boy in the upper right of the screen is showing his brother how to do vocal warm-ups in a vocal pattern. He's painted the outline of a hand, ooh, and then he teaches his brother how to do that. So some other things that we have to talk about in first grade, they generally do a play every year, and the kindergartners have already done those. And Amy has decided to try and take the Herculean task of having Screencastify do a lot of the speaking parts and singing parts. So what she's posted is a Screencastify tutorial for the students so they can record their voices. And she also posted a Screencastify tutorial for teachers. I included the teacher tutorial here on my slides. If you're interested in Screencastify, it's a fabulous tool. We also use rhythm reading, which is a great program. This is what it looks like when a student is doing rhythm reading. And I think you can see the slides, the picture of the slides on the page right there in the pink. So the students record themselves and send it back, and then they get personalized feedback from the teacher. Right here, rhythm training is another fabulous link for kids, and it's very helpful for working with students. So I included it for you to check out after this webinar. Another thing that Amy did was started with an interactive board of music bingo, and that she started that in week 6 when she knew students were comfortable with the distance learning as much as they're going to be. This is in addition to what they get in Google Slides, and they submit, they do any of these activities. The little balloon goes up and down, their voices go up and down with it. There's the sidewalk chalk. All of these are live links in hers. It's not on my website live though. She has all these different examples in the 5 main categories that correlate to kind of our curriculum areas. So the students do these things. The parents sign off a square, and when they get bingo, they send a picture in to Amy, and she puts it in a slideshow for the school to see who got bingo that week. Moving on to general music grades 2 through 4. Grades 2, 3, and 4 students are now more computer literate, but still need guidance to apply their knowledge to these new programs and experiences. And their teacher, Wes Marchena, has done several weekly units with the students that have really engaged them to create and perform music. The first 2 weeks, he kind of did it so they could get familiar with the Google platform. They all have, like I said, Chromebooks now. We had to do pickups, as I think I said. So he did a Google Slides show, complete with videos about the instruments of the orchestra. After that, he decided to get a little more creative and had them listen to this little piece called Clapping Music. And he did, this is his Google deck that I'm showing you now. And it shows a pattern of where they're going to clap and shake their hands. Here's a little bit of the performance just as, to show you what I'm talking about. If you see on my slides, that's exactly right up here. So what Wes did is he went ahead and showed the students that here's theme 1, and here's theme 2, variation 1 starting as a canon after, and variation 3 starting as a canon after. Then he put that together and played, and he brought that into, oops, this is the wrong thing, sorry. He brought that into Google Music Lab, which I'm going to show you in a minute, and the kids had to record themselves doing this. So here's Google Music Lab. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but it is fabulous. It's a wonderful link, wonderful thing. You can go on, and I think this might have been the one you used, and manipulate it any way. I can make a 3-part canon on this. I'm just clicking things, and then it makes a loop, which is pretty cool. And again, it's a Google thing. It's a free use thing. So it's been really very, very fun for the kids, and they record and send in the recordings to Wes. So then after he did that, he introduced them to Songmaker, and students were asked to explore this and turn in their final exploration as their assignment. Songmaker looks like this. And it's a grid, and you fill in the grids with different things, and you have a choice of marimba, woodwind, forever, up, down. Here we have choice of percussion instruments, and you can vary it, and it'll do it, and like this. And I have an example of a little song that one of the kids sent in to Wes, and give it a second to load. And the kids have had such great fun with this. This is a 3rd grade student. And it just loops back and forth, and they had a blast with that. I've also included 3 YouTube links. I'm not going to click on these links right now because I've got a lot to get through, but I want to throw ideas at you. These were augmenting the assignments that Wes gave them in Google Classroom. He gives all this teacher feedback in Google Classroom in the private response thing. And Wes, as all of us do, hold regular Zoom live office hours just to reconnect with the students. In grades 5 through 8, we have a really unique plan at our middle school called Wisconsin Middle School. All special area classes, art, music, theater, gym, and tech ed meet for 16 consecutive classes and then move on to another special rotation. So since we entered distance learning, not knowing how long this was going to last, and actually now we do, and since the iPads that we had managed to grab for kids to do GarageBand were not available since they're at school, and we have switched since to Chrome, the 3 separate teachers that teach these areas came together to try and decide what to teach. And what they are doing is a 16-day history of jazz, how it leads to hip hop music. So I just want to show you a couple of things that they did. Here's the slide deck that they used for history of hip hop, and this link is on so you can go check it out. It has listening examples in it, embedded, and all sorts of things like that, which is really kind of cool. And the kids listen to that, and they submit their answers through Google Forms like this. This is from watching, and this is all done on safe YouTube, so there's no ads, and the quality is good for putting it out at school because you don't have to worry about anything shady or language issues with safe YouTube. So this is what the students would fill out as feedback to the video that they watched, which then they get graded, feedback on that, and any private comments about that. Every morning, because they have to have attendance, every morning they ask the coolest questions of the day, like, what's your favorite band? Do you believe in fate? Just really fun and engaging questions of the day, and the kids answer the question, and then they know they're present. I've put links to The other, what is jazz, from jazz to hip hop, the other slide decks for you to check out if you would like. Something that they did that I thought was pretty awesome was they did something called Catch-Up Day. Because the rotations are 16 days long, they kind of don't exactly gel with days of the week. They have Catch-Up Day where the kids have the opportunity to go through all of the classroom, look for any of the assignments that are done, and do it before they move on to their next rotation in their specials. So that would be how we're dealing with general music in virtual learning. This is Brookfield High School's musical electives. They run this semester 4 different elective classes. In Music Appreciation 1, it's a very, very popular class. We always have too many kids that we're looking for on this. And this is John Lamandola's Google Classroom that he has for Music Appreciation 1, which is the history of rock and roll. And in here, he's got listening journals that the kids have to fill in after they listen to this particular song, which is in the assignments, and the listening journals get handed in. He's got projects too embedded in this, and I wanted to show you one of the 60s. Let me find that one. Here, his assignment is there's a PowerPoint on Beatles slideshow. Then they have to listen to these 3 Beatles songs, and here's the lyrics so they can see what's going on with that. And then there's Google Form listening logs for that. There's also, I believe, a quiz for it for later on. He also has very engaging questions of the day. If you had to flee the country, where would you go? Just really gets the kids very set for if Mars was livable, would you live there? It's kind of funny. So then again, another set of Google Slides and songs for the kids to listen to and fill out a listening journal too. So that would be Music Appreciation 1 and how John is dealing with that offline. Music Appreciation 2 is the history of music, and it starts from, let me think, the classical period and runs up to the present day, with special attention paid to Mozart, Beethoven, Strauss, and other prominent composers. This is his Google Classroom with the introduction to the Romantic period. And you can see here, he's got them listening with listening journals here. And there are slide decks that he has with history, making connections between music and literature and art and things that are going on historically at the time period. So his classroom is pretty full with these things, but I've got this link for you to look through if you would like. Beginning guitar is also a popular class here in Brookfield, and you can use an electric or an acoustic guitar. And luckily, Stephen St. George, who teaches this, managed to get the kids all of their guitars. Stephen is careful to make really great videos tutoring the kids on chord placement.
So then you're ready to move on and record Scarborough Fair. A couple of things to know is same rules apply, where if you don't see a change in the next measure, we continue to play the same chord until you see a new chord. So
you can see he's covering a lot of review and then moving them forward, and he has his fingerboard right there, so you can see exactly what's going on when he's doing it. So it's almost like you're there. He builds chordal knowledge sequentially, just like anybody else would, and the students just really love this. They submit videos of themselves playing along for assessment and complete worksheet activities on Google Classroom. Next, let's take a look at AP Music Theory. This one I found has 2 really helpful online platforms. This one is musictheory.net, and as you can see, I have all sorts of different things. If you've not seen it, it's really quite fun. There's so many activities for kids to do. It's a great place to review for theory, because these are all little exercises about what how you do note identification, how do you do key signatures, how do you do this, what is this, okay, so it's an A flat, let me do that, here we go, and we go on to the next one. So it's a great practice resource for the kids if they're doing music theory or AP music theory. Another one is Albert.io, and I must admit I don't know a whole lot about Albert.io, but I know Stephen assigns kids lessons in Albert.io for all the AP music things, and it has an AP video thing where you can view courses. And I was going to hit on, as you can see, it's got all these. I was going to hit on one of the AP overviews, but I don't think I have time. So please feel free to explore Albert.io. The link is here on my slideshow. It's really nice to listen to Stephen's approach. He's so clear with the directions to his students. He's giving feedback again through Google Classroom private chat and through weekly Zoom office hours. Now, here's my bailiwick. This is what I do. This is Huckleberry Hill Elementary School beginning band. And these kids right here, some of my students, and in Brookfield, a child can play a band instrument in the 4th grade. We meet once a week for 30 minutes and have early morning band on Wednesdays for about 45, 50 minutes. I have a great participation rate. I've just become really lucky. It's become part of the school culture to sign up and play in band. I have over 140 kids out of 167 in 4th grade in band. So I'm always looking for ways to keep up student engagement and practice. And when we started with this distance learning, I was like, oh no, I'm going to lose so many kids. But then somebody showed me about Flipgrid, and I believe breathed a major sigh of relief. This is, if you've not checked it out, people, this is a must see. This is what the students see when they look at Flipgrid. This is my May the 4th Be With You. Yes, long, long time ago. And the song was Long, Long Ago. I assigned them, excuse me, one assigned song that they have to practice. And my video instruction to them is right here when they look. Hey guys, it's Long, Long Ago week. Okay, we don't need to hear too much of me. So you can play it as many times as you want. You can make a little message here, and this reads my message out loud. So if you have kids that are having reading issues or lower reading levels, which I do have in my band, you can hit that. This is, I've got 31 responses for this week. Look at this. May the 4th be with you. He got my joke. So there's emojis they can click on. They can do different screen things. They can draw. They are having a blast with this. And so am I. So that's what the student page looks like. This is what the teacher page looks like right here. And I racing against the clock here. So when I go into my grid, this is what I look. You can turn student comments on or student comments off. This is what I see. And I'll just play a little bit of Noelle right here. She records herself on her phone or Chromebook, plays for me the assignment, which happens to be Forever Shaka this week. Then I give her feedback right here in this little video. Hey, Noelle, let's show her that. So I'm able to really individualize the feedback. Then the feedback comes, I can share the feedback via feedback. And luckily our IT department turned on the 2nd through 4th grade kids Google email. So this goes right back to her Google email. This I copy right into the private comment of Google Classroom. This is also connected with Google Classroom. If I go back to my grid, I can just I can create data sheets and I can connect the whole thing with Google. So let me keep going because I am talking too much. Retention in next year, I'll hit when I get to the high school. This is a site. If the students forgot their book, I use this book. They got a free sign-in to get to see what the book was. If you have not ever seen it for beginning and intermediate people, Mr. Dixon's band stuff, this is definitely a site that you ought to check out. There is so much on this site. It's incredible. So many things to use. Oh, let's move on to middle school band. Middle school band has 2 teachers, 5th through 8th grade. 5th through 6th grade is Leah Grace. Here's a clapping guide that she found that is just so accessible for middle school kids.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the 3rd episode.
Okay, let's.
2, 3, 4, and stop. All right, let's clap it together. Go. 2, 3, 4.
He gets on to much more complex things, and Leah embeds them in her Google Classroom. She also has them recording themselves to send in. And how do you record yourself? Well, when you're in 5th grade, you may not know how to get a really good recording. So Leah made a whole Google slideshow of how to record yourself, how to decide what device, some tutorials. So I shared this with you in case you might want to check it out because for 5th and 6th grades, it's new to them. 5th and 6th grade score study, Adam Robinson, the other band teacher, and Leah decided they were going to have the children try and do some score study. with what they do. So this introduces them to what a score is. Why do you even bother to do that? Identifying instruments, similar instrument parts. And then after that, what they did was they had a score study Google form that asks them specific questions. This is from the song Across the Serengeti. And as you can see, we're at first trying to get dynamic markings and similar rhythms going in. And that's a 5th grade sheet that I shared with you. I have 4 minutes left. So this is a tutorial that Adam Robinson did for his 7th and 8th grade band, major versus minor scales, because they're getting into relative minor scales. That's shared for you on here. So you can access this if you want. He has them record that. Here is an example of a student who, 8th grader, who completed her flute chromatic and did it in iMovie. This is just so cool. I'm just going to play a little bit of it. Okay, please go on and check the rest of that out. It's wonderful. An 8th grade girl who did that, just seeing the greatest things, aren't we, from our kids? Let's go on to the Brookfield High School Band and looking at this, and 2 minutes left. So Brookfield High School Band is directed by Stephen St. George. He uses smart music a lot. Smart music looks like this. There's all sorts of, oh my gosh, smart music just has so much you really ought to go explore. Stephen does a wonderful smart music tutorial for the kids to get started using smart music. I've included that for you to watch. So if you like, you can grab some ideas from that and go running with that. He also did a materials survey to start, which many of the teachers did. What's at home? Some teachers did a scavenger hunt for what's at home. Stephen also wanted them to be able to listen to some live music. Lincoln Center at Home, which I have bookmarked for you here, has weekly lunchtime play lists, live performances, dance workshop, ballet essentials. I mean, there's so much stuff on here, and it's all free. So he's got assignments with the kids listening to those things. Just out today is a new recruitment tool from Be Part of the Music. And being part of the music, I'm interested in joining bands. Okay, so let's see what happens. And look at this. It's a new recruitment tool that can be done online. And I've yet to check it out, but it's hot off the press. I wanted to include that for you guys today to see. Let's go to 5th and 8th grade course, which is taught by Diana Vogel. She has figured out that if you go onto JW Pepper, you can download, or you can upload, to Google Classroom. Arranged by Dave and Jean Perry. The songs that the kids are singing. So what she has, she has the kids sing along with their part, and when it goes to 2 parts, then they have to follow their own part, and they send in that in a weekly assessment form, which looks like this. She's also been doing Zoom meetings here. She's asking them for pitch accuracy, rhythmic accuracy, dynamics, and diction. So really quite comprehensive. And she also has Zoom meetings with the kids. The Brookfield High School choral program is run by John LaMandola. He does some really wonderful things. He has a warm-up that the kids love about Albert the alligator, and one of his assignments was to get his kids to determine the correct solfege for that piece and send a written response into him. He has the most engaging questions of the day and attendance I've ever seen. Really great. He has them do a listening journal about what they're singing. And he's got questions too that are written responses. For example, you are the director. What 5 pieces you're going to do at this concert? Tell me why you picked what and what genre they're in and how you put this together. He did a quick little thing on Incredibox, which is another wonderful link that's great fun. This is We Are that was made by one of his sophomore students. Which is great fun. And I'm going to stop right now. Check it out. Now, one of the things that we music people and art people have to discover is how to actually give honor to our seniors who have been with us for so long. So I thought I'd put this in here. What John stole from another person, and you certainly can steal from John, is a slideshow with music with each one of the seniors filling out this particular thing with a picture of them, so we can honor them on the school website the way they should be, because that's a toughie. I'm going to very quickly go through theater arts. I know I'm a little OT, but I just want to tell you we're very lucky to have a theater arts program in grades 5 through 8. Performing arts, Jay Warren teaches this, and he is amazing. This is his example of how to do Jabberwocky at home, okay? Get ready for this. Oh, no, I have to find it. Oh, hold on one second. Okay. Yeah, this is it right here. Okay, I thought I had it queued up. With things you can use at home. Here we go.
And the slide goes, gyre and timber in the wave. All music where the forest grows, the full grass.
So you can see he's got Pez things doing his Jabberwocky. The kids usually do an iMovie with this, but he's got stuffed animals doing it. This is a kid doing it with 2 stuffed animals. They memorize that. He teaches them ventriloquism. He had to make sock puppets, that's what this is, and do ventriloquism. It's unbelievable. Then they also recreated a famous scene. Here is Home Alone in Legos and Star Wars in the front lawn. He does pantomime and really fabulous vocal exercises that any musician would be happy to see, vocal warm-ups. He teaches about diaphragmatic breathing, and it's just such great stuff for the kids, and a great resource that he's
To walk you through some basic vocal and breathing exercises.
That's Jay.
And your assignment for today is to practice these over the next couple of days. All right?
Okay, so it's fabulous to watch, and a real great, tool. I'm just going to breeze through art really quick because I know we have to get to questions. Our first grade art teacher did some of these aluminum foil sculpture, which I thought was genius, drawing up self-portrait of our pets and stuffy animals, and drawing ovals to learn how to do bunnies, and making slime. Our grades 2 through 4 teacher is working on perspective, and she did a whole bunch of Screencastify things, which I referenced back in general music, the younger grades. This is what I really wanted to hit, is Art Sonia. For you art teachers, this is a fabulous, fabulous resource. It actually can create a portfolio from grade K all the way up to grade 12 that follows the kid easily from school to school. You press a button, it moves over to the next grade, everybody. Parents can be fans on this. They have standard space lessons ready to go. It's just a wonderful resource, and I thought I would throw that out to you because it's just too important to not see. And in grades 5 through 8, we have, again, that little rotation. She did some really fun things with still life with plants, optical illusion letters, renewal rocks, which you're finding all over the place today, mail art to decorate an envelope and then send to that special person, and a mini mule mantra. And last of all, we have the art electives, and I'll tell you, ceramics was a toughie, and Jay Webb and Sarah Garber, who do our art up at the high school, have come up with 3D sculpture things, origami, put out a questionnaire to the kids to see what they wanted to do. So it's going. It's not exactly clay. They left their pinch pots at school. They didn't get the glaze, but they're still doing 3D work. I just want to thank all the wonderful teachers and administration in Brookfield for helping me out with this and showing me so much of their wonderful work. I've got my contact info down there. I even put my cell phone number because, like, where am I going? So feel free to contact me if you have questions about any of this stuff. And that's what I have. So I'll turn it back to Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really, there were so many resources. And for those of you on the call, we do have the slides available in the handout section that you can download. We'll also be posting them onto our COVID-19 District Resources webpage. I do have a question for you, Margaret, about, giving students access to different links and sites like Facebook and YouTube. What strategies or concerns do you have around, like, the privacy and protection for students?
Well, the most of the YouTube things are done on Safe YouTube. The YouTube videos that we have, we don't have students on those YouTube videos. The videos that the kids submit are in Google Classroom and uploaded there. So the only one really who can access those are the teacher unless they're shared. So any child space that you saw in this was shared, I have permission to share, so I did check before I did. So I hope that answers that.
Yes, it does. And this is a question for all of the presenters in terms of, how much time are your students spending on arts lessons, whether it be music or arts or visual or fine arts, theater, that kind of thing. And how are you providing feedback, or how are your teachers providing feedback? I know you touched on some of it.
Okay, well, I'll start off with music. In Flipgrid, I'm allowed to give extensive verbal feedback and demonstrate, although it's a mirror screen so you're backwards, demonstrate all sorts of things to the kids. If they're not slurring, I can demonstrate what it sounds like to slur, and then I can demonstrate what it sounds like not to slur, ask them to pause the video, practice it again, and then move on. So that's very specific feedback. General feedback for all of our teachers has been through the private stream in Google class, and when we have our Zoom meetings, they're really general, just checking out how you do in meetings. So that's basically how feedback is given in Brookfield.
In Waterbury, we're doing it through the Google Classroom app, where you can comment on their work or have that private conversation in that chat bar with them. And then I will give general feedback in the classroom stream if needed.
And our feedback is often given through platforms such as Google Classroom and the Seesaw apps, as well as through email and any way that they can communicate it. Teachers are doing their best to give feedback on work. In Glastonbury, I think everybody's finding that to be a challenge, especially if it's specific to a process or a technique. If it's simply hey, thanks for doing this, or this looks like you need to do some more work, that's pretty simple. But when it's specific to a technique or a media skill, that's harder to do unless kids are able to download a photo and then get right back to them with verbal feedback.
I will say in Smart Music app, you're allowed, you can give feedback to kids in via the Smart Music app, which they have their own account for, so they get the account feedback from there.
And what kinds of levels of engagement are you seeing for your students?
I wish I could say 100%. That would be really nice. Some weeks I have 80% in my band. Some weeks I have 40%. I had to hunt some kids down, like everybody else said. We're running, my guess, a total rate of participation between 50 and 60%. I would say is a fair number in our elementary and middle schools and the high schools, because they have to really get credit for the courses. It's a little better, I'd say around 80, 85%.
From Glastonbury, it sounds like teachers, if they continually try to make contact with those kids who have not been engaged at all, they will eventually connect with them. We probably have, at the elementary level, I'm hearing some classes, 4 or 5 kids are not at all ever connected. It seems at the elementary level, even the engagement has gone down over the weeks, because I think the classroom work has become a bigger burden for those parents, and some of those parents may be putting aside what they call the specials work. At the high school level, I think most of my teachers are seeing most students engaged and actively learning.
I have to say, in my classroom, I'm finding it varies from week to week who's actively engaged, every week and who's not. And I think what Cindy's saying about the elementary is true, where they have so much going on in the academics that, they're not getting to the arts in a timely manner.
It's unfortunate that we're at time because there are so many questions, but for those of you that have posed questions, we will make sure that our presenters see those questions. I'm able to produce a report for them, and we'll get back to you on those questions that you posed that were specific to their sessions. I really, really enjoyed this presentation, and I want to thank our presenters on behalf of the Connecticut State Department of Education and the Commissioner of Education. Thank you so much for sharing your best practices, for paving the way for virtual learning, to share the arts and music and theater with our students and virtually, just in helping our students and families just make sure that they have the arts and music experience still, even though we're not together in school. So thank you again. I thank you everyone for attending, and please have a very, very nice day. Thank you.